Hello, my name is Liz, and welcome to the Tiny Treatery. I want you to fill in the blank for me. This is a WUG. Now there is another. There are two of them. There are two... Did you say WUGs? So you should have if you are a speaker of English. This is a very famous test that was developed by Jean Berko-Gleason that is well known within the psycholinguistic community, and essentially it's a test to try and determine how children acquire English morphology. Morphology being the formation of words, i.e. adding the plural suffix to the nonsense word WUG, which is a word you probably have never heard before, but you were still able to make it plural. So today I'm going to be making WUG cookies. So tomorrow is the very last day of the section of the introductory linguistics course that I am a TA for here at the University of Washington, and I decided that I'm going to make my students a little treat as a reward for showing up to section and so on and so forth, and just because I thought it would be fun. So I'll meet you in the kitchen. Welcome to the kitchen. Sorry that the dishwasher is running. It just is what it is. As you can see, I already have some slabs of cookie dough, just plain sugar cookie dough. I have some royal icing ready, which took a very long time to make, and it was messy and sticky, and I hate making royal icing, but it is done. And I have some little WUG templates that I'll be using to make the cookies. They are a little tiny, but I think maybe they'll get bigger in the oven. I don't know. This might be a disaster. We'll have to see. So I guess I'll preheat the oven and get started cutting some cookies out, putting them onto this tray. I have 24 cookies here and 23 cookies over there. So that was a lot more work than I anticipated, but I have more than enough cookies for like the 4 students that show up to my section. But I'm also going to bring these to like an end of year party with the other linguistic students, so it's not like a complete waste. So the next thing is to decorate. So I have black royal icing for like the outline, and then the WUG has a little eye, and then blue for the body of the WUG. In theory, this black icing is a little thicker in consistency, so it can serve as my outline, and then I'll flood it with the blue. I'm not sure how that's going to look, if this will end up covering the black outline, because I feel like the black outline is kind of characteristic of the WUG, but this is the design I have gone with, so it's too late. It's what I'm going to do. I hope I can get like at least 12 that look okay, because I am just not that talented with royal icing, but I have a lot of opportunities, so let's decorate. Hello. So here's my beautiful WUG drawing for the ambiance while I talk to you about what the WUG test actually is and what the experiment was. So the purpose of the WUG test is to test the morphological knowledge of children. So what was the actual experiment that they did, and what was its goal? So this is the paper that described the test and the results of the test, The Child's Learning of English Morphology by Jean Berko. And here in this introduction, it says, in this study, we set out to discover what is learned by children exposed to English morphology. To test for knowledge of morphological rules, we use nonsense materials. We know that if a subject can supply the correct plural ending, for instance, to a noun that we have made up, he has internalized a working system of the plural allomorphs in English and is able to generalize to new cases and select the right form. So the idea is, per this next sentence, if a child knows that the plural of which is witches, he may simply have memorized the plural form. If, however, he tells us that the plural of gutch is gutches, we have evidence that he actually knows, albeit unconsciously, one of the rules which the descriptive linguist too would set forth in his grammar. So we would hope and expect, right, that if you show children words they have never seen before, they would be able to make the plural because they know the rule, not just because they individually memorize the singular versus the plural forms of words. But this is what this test set out to discover. So the whole experiment investigated plural endings, past tense endings, endings, progressive endings, and adjective endings, the comparative and superlative like red, redder, reddest. But I'm only going to be talking about the findings for the plural ending ones because that's what's relevant for the WUG, and that is the famous example everybody knows. So we'll just talk about that for now. Let's go over some of these examples and their results. So first, of course, the WUG. The answer to the prompt is there are two WUGs. We need the child to say WUGs with a Z because that's how the plural rule works in English. You would not say WUGs, you would say WUGs. And according to the results, 76% of preschool children got this correct, and 97% of first graders got it correct. So they did show that they were able to do this, a lot of them. Another example is heaf. So there are actually two acceptable answers to this one. You could say there are two heafs, or there are two heaves. So if you say heafs, this is because you're ending with a voiceless sound, so you have to use the S sound instead of the Z sound. But they decided to also accept heaves because that's what some adults would do because of the parallel between a word like leaf and leaves. But in both cases, the actual plural marker you're selecting depends on the sound before it. So if you say heafs, the voiceless f is what is determining the fact that you're doing an S sound next. But for heaves, the voiced v is determining why you're doing a Z for the next one. And this one, not as many children got it, but a lot of them still did. 79% of preschoolers and 80% of first graders. And there wasn't a huge difference between the preschoolers and first graders in this case. And this one, which was mentioned in the intro, gutch, I don't know if it's gutch, gutch, I don't know, something like that. Doesn't really matter because the key thing is the ending sound. So there are two gutches. And so for this one, because it ends in a voiceless alveolar sound, which if you don't know what that means, if you take your tongue and feel along the ridge just behind your teeth, that's the alveolar ridge. So you make S's and Z sounds there, and also ch and j sounds. So this is the voiceless alveolar affricate, ch. And because of that, there is this epenthesis rule, which means you insert a sound in between two other sounds, because it would be very difficult to say gutch, gutch. You have to have a vowel in between them because you can't really pronounce them in succession like that. Gutches, not gutchs. Not so many children got this one correctly. It was a little more complicated for them. So 28% of preschoolers got it and 38% of first graders got it. So then we have another example, loon. The correct answer for this is loons. Just like the WUG one, it ends in a voice sound, so the plural marker needs to be Z. However, this is actually a little more complicated than it seems at first. So 68% of preschoolers got this, and 92% of first graders got this, and it has a pretty significant level of difference. And the reason for this comes down to phonology versus morphology. So, per the paper, the ability to add Z to WUG and S to BIC. I didn't see an example actually where they asked them to pluralize BIC to BICs, but if that were in there, that's what it would need to be. Does not alone prove that the child possesses the rule that tells which allomorph of the plural must be used. English phonology decrees that there cannot be a consonant cluster of KZ or GZ, GS. So you couldn't say WUGS, WUGS. I mean, you can force yourself to say it, but English phonology pretty much disallows that, so it's very difficult to do. So the point being, just because they said WUGs does not mean they actually know that after a voice sound, the plural marker must always be voiced, because there's this other rule in the phonology that is kind of playing along with it that is preventing you from even making it sound at all. So it's not clear that they're making the correct choice because of morphology or phonology. But then this next sentence says, the instances in English where there is a choice are after the L sound, the N sound, and sound, and after a vowel or semivowel. So we have minimal pairs like L's and else, hers and purse, hens and hence, pews and puce. So in these cases, we could just take hens and hence, for example. You have an N sound at the end, but you're able to put a S or a Z. Both of them are allowed according to phonology. So if you make up a nonsense word like loon, like the flower loons, you could expect that some of the children might put a S sound because the phonology says that they can. So are they going to do that? And this is what the paper says. So if, however, the child is faced with a new word ending in a vowel, semivowel, L, N, or R, he himself must make the choice, because so far as English phonology is concerned, he could add either a Z or an S and still have a possible English word. We would expect him, therefore, to have more difficulty forming the plural of a new word ending in these sounds than in cases where the phonology determines the form of the sibilant. These problems are presented by the forms cra, tor, and loon, so the flower one that I showed you earlier. And as we saw, during the period from preschool to first grade, they do improve in handling these forms. But something extra interesting is that the case of adding S to these forms did not arise The child here, as in so many other stages of language learning, answered complexity with silence. The wrong answers were invariably the unaltered form of the singular. So if we go back to the chart, we said that 68% of preschoolers got this right, 92% of first graders. So the question is, okay, the children that didn't get it right, did they do what we were saying they might do and pick the wrong version of the ending? No, they did not do that. They just said loon again, and they didn't actually come up with a new thing if they didn't know the correct answer. Conclusion. All in all, children did show understanding of morphology with nonsense words, and the older children tended to perform better on a number of examples, especially some of the more complex ones. And the paper's actual conclusion is, where they provided inflectional endings, their best performance was with those forms that are most regular and have the fewest variants. With the morphemes that have several allomorphs, they could handle forms calling for the most common of those allomorphs long before they could deal with allomorphs that appear in a limited distribution range. So though their performance varied on the different items, they did show that they were able to do it, and it is not the case that they are just simply memorizing singular and plural versions of words, and they actually do, very young, start learning these rules. Back to the cookies. Oh, and one more thing. All the pictures that I got for the presentation came from the actual book, the WUG Test, which has all the pictures of what the children were shown in the experiment, along with discussion of what the answer is, and then research notes on how the results turned out for the different items. Look at the baby Wuglet! Welcome to the taste test table. So, wow, I piped a lot of wugs. 47 wugs were piped in the making of this video. Some of them definitely turned out more cute than others. I kind of got like a technique down later than I should have, but eventually I did figure out a better technique for doing the outline and the flooding. Like, I think at first I was flooding it too much and it was tending to like overflow and overpower the outline, but by the end I think I got the hang of how to make a cute wug. But I think it took like 30 or so to really get the hang of it. So most of them are not as cute as I would necessarily like them to be, but they're all special and they're all cute. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't be mean, sorry. But what's worse is I had a realization about halfway through that I forgot to put flavoring in my royal icing. So it's just sugar and water and meringue powder. So that's probably gonna be gross and I am sad, but I had already made the royal icing. I had already piped like half of them. I was not about to turn back. Really unfortunate because the cookie recipe linked below is very good. These cookies taste very good, but I'm just fearful that with the frosting, it's gonna be disgusting. So let's find out. You know, it's not as bad as I would have feared. The cookie is really carrying its weight. So the layer of frosting is pretty thin, which is a good thing. I feel like sometimes when I make cookies with royal icing, the frosting layer tends to be too thick. I don't know, but usually I get really upset. Or maybe it's that the cookie itself is thicker and I'm getting better at making nice plump cookies. Who knows? But it is not the blatant tragedy that I thought it was gonna be. So I'm very pleased with that. Also, it was fun because of how simple the design was. So, you know, if you're trying to get started with royal icing and making cookies, making wugs might be, well, it was kind of tedious to cut out each cookie one at a time with a knife. If anybody has a WUG cookie cutter or something like that, or knows 3D modeling and can make one, you'll be much better off doing a project like this. But the royal icing part, the design was simple, so it made for good practice for repetitive outlining and piping. And also something I really like about this, and maybe I should just do this on all cookies in the future and claim it's a style choice, because the outline and flood are different colors, it doesn't matter that they're not seamless. Because usually you have to either be very skilled to get a seamless looking outline and flood, or the real talented people, they just have a mid-consistency royal icing that can be like the outline and flood at the same time. Honestly, my flood was probably around that consistency because I had to shake every one of them pretty aggressively to make them lay flat because I was afraid of making it too thin, so I guess I overcompensated and made it too thick, but it all worked out in the end. It was just a little more work. Anyway, point being, very simple design. If you want to make some cute cookies, this might be the way to go. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed learning about WUGs and the WUG test, and subscribe for more tiny treats.